All right, we're back. We are COMP308 in the winter 2019 semester. It's week 5, part 2 of our broadcast. We're just going to continue with where we left off using Express.js and CRUD, create, read, update, delete. Part 2 of that, we just kind of mostly finished doing our, our survey. And thanks to Bhakti for coming out. Okay, so we have this project. And what we were doing is we just updated the project with a couple things. Remember, like last time, what we want to do is we want to, I went control backtick, bring up my terminal, my integrated terminal, and I'm going to remove the remote from GitHub. So we have Git that's built in because we copied the project. We're going to say Git. We're going to say Git remote remove origin. And this is going to take away our origin remote. In order for us to prepare, we have to create a new repo on GitHub. So I'm going to go to github.com/Centennial College and create a new repository. I'm just going to call this thing COMP308 in the W2019 semester, and it's lesson 5B, just for you guys, the B team, but not the bad team. And then we grab this stuff, this last 2 lines of code from up here, going back to our terminal, right-clicking and entering, and that should set up the origin remote, push everything to GitHub. All right, so that is, we're back on track. We've got our project running right now. A little bit of a recap of what we did last week, I think it's important. So let's take a look. When we set up our project, we set it up with MongoDB. So just like we've done in the previous video, we have MongoDB running in the background. We also talked about some web services, MLab and Heroku, but we're not going to do that right now. I want to just go over the project structure. In our config folder, we have db.js, which basically tells us the connection to our local DB, which in this case is test. We have our models folder where we have a contact JavaScript file where we set up our model. So we have our Mongoose model. Now, one thing we found out also is when we set up our schema, I did say I kind of stated this incorrectly. So the collection, what is the collection like compared to other databases? If I was going to say collection, what does that mean in other databases? Table, right? Table. So table, collection, and record is what in on the Mongo side? What do I call the record on the MongoDB? Document, right? So collection, table, record, document, right? So this actually is our model, not our database. So here, instead of test, we should probably have put something like the contact is what should go here. Okay, that's our model name. It doesn't do anything. It just helps us identify what the model name is and what the model schema is. That's what that is. So that's on the contact.js. That's all I've changed. So then we went into routing. On the routing side, we have contact.js. We set up a very simple contact list. And all this does on the contact route, that's what it is. It just basically allows us to go to the contact list, and we render the contact list by looking at the view, the related view, which is contact/index. So if you go to contacts index on our views, you go to contacts index, you can see that we have this view that we created, which is basically a table, first name, last name, and age, that'll print out our contacts. All right. So if we run this thing now, I'm going to go back to control backtick. I'm going to clear the screen. And if I use NodeMon, then we should see this. It should connect to our Mongo database like this. Okay. And then if we go here and I put in, first of all, let's refresh so you can see that we're making this run, a new repo. If I go to localhost 3000 now, we can see this, okay? And if you notice, I can go from one kind of link to the other, no problem. And I have this, which is our contact list. If I press this contact list, it'll show us the contact list that we have here. Looks like we have the Doe family here, Chuck, Jane, Sarah, and Chuck. John, Jane, Sarah, yeah, okay, that's right. And what we're going to do today is we're going to continue with this example. This is the read part of CRUD. We're going to do create, update, and delete. And you might say, well, if that's all we can do in 4 hours, we're in trouble. But actually, you're going to see that there's quite a bit of work to do to understand how to do that properly. Before I continue, though, I should say from an administrative note, there's a couple things to do. So tonight you have your list of favorite things. Let's do as your exercise. I kind of gave you the opportunity to hand that in after a week. Gives you a chance to practice using Mongo and Express and all that kind of stuff. And then next week we have our assignment 1 that's due, which is your portfolio Express website. So please don't procrastinate on that one. It takes a lot longer than you think it does to put things together, especially when it's about you. People have an issue of talking about themselves for one reason or other. I think it's even bad for resumes. They don't like putting resumes together. They don't like talking about it, themselves. And I think it's important for us as a selling point to be able to, kind of speak honestly and put together some kind of marketing materials, even for yourself. Anyways, so get that done. Work on it. Please don't procrastinate. That's my, my public kind of announcement. Let's move on now to what we're doing here today. So what I want to do is, this is nice, but I'd like to be able to add another contact, right? So I want to modify this page to give me the ability to do that. And I need a button for this, some kind of button or interface to allow me to add stuff. So in order for me to do that, I'm going to go back to my project. I'm going to look at that view, which is under views, context, index.ejs, this one that I'm looking at right now. And I have kind of this area here that is, my container. This is all Bootstrap stuff, container, row, kind of centers inside Bootstrap with 3 columns to the left. We're using Bootstrap's 12-column grid. And we're using 6 columns for the content area in the middle. And we have right now an H1 tag, which is a heading 1 that shows our title. That's pretty big. What I want to do is just underneath that, I want to put an anchor tag with a link. Now, to get some code to help us with that, let's go to Bootstrap. So again, if we look at getbootstrap.com, and we can look at our documentations, we can go to components, we can look at buttons, and you can see that they have different options. Here's the one that I want. I wanted to make it an anchor tag. Kind of looks like this. So I'm going to copy this one, go back and paste it inside here. So there's our button, button primary. Button primary is blue. Button warning is yellow. And button danger is red. So basic colors. You can also set up your own things. So what I want to do here is our href value is going to go to a new route. And it's going to look like something like this. It's going to go to contact lists / and then add. Okay. Now there is something to be said about how we're doing this. We're going to go to add a page, and we're going to need another page to appear when we're adding it. So even though we're adding this link, there is no link. It's not going to go anywhere right now. This page is not going to display anything to us because there's no route. We have to create the route, and we also have to create the page that after we follow the route, it has to show something. So we have 2 pages. Every time we create a link, we have to create 2 things: the route and the page, at least. Sometimes 3 things: the route, right, the page, and then any kind of processing you want to do in that page. So like a 3rd link. So that's one thing. This is going to be called like add a contact. Right, that's what we want to do here. And let's add some kind of anchor tag for our font awesome. Let's move this down to another row here, another line. Doesn't matter. We can split things across lines, not a problem. And we'll say that we want to kind of put a checkbox or something like that. And if you look at the font awesome stuff, we've adjusted font awesome from last week when we're using Fort Awesome. So if I look at font awesome icons and I want to see something like the edit, if I go edit, you can see that there's some really good examples here of where I want to edit something. Or if I put add, right? Add and edit. Sometimes we have a plus, which is pretty cool, a plus square. Let's put that one. I think it might be good. And again, it looks like the code is FAS FA plus square, right? So we can put that in there. If you want to use outlines, sometimes outlines are better. So plus square outlines. So you can see that this is far plus square, right? And there's some other ones like plus circle, which is pretty good too. So FAS, FA plus circle. So we can just actually take this whole thing and copy it, and it should work exactly how it looks. So again, I can just kind of cut paste there, and that's definitely not what we want. And let's try that again. So that's pretty cool. So so you can see that that works. Add a contact with a FA plus circle. It's not going to go anywhere right now because we don't have a route, but we should be able to see kind of the thing that we want here, right? So it kind of looks pretty cool. Little circle, and that's kind of good design, you know, to have a little, you know, kind of a symbol or something similar to what we're doing here. And again, there's debate around whether you should do this or not. Some people are not for it anymore. It's kind of a little older now. It used to be really popular to do. Some people like just to put the symbols, no text at all, because it kind of should be self-explanatory. Mine aren't. Doesn't make birthday cake definitely doesn't mean services, that's for sure. And one of the things to also consider is in a professional environment, you'd probably want to make your own, right? But here we're going to add a contact. Now, if I click this, it's going to take us to contact list add, and we're going to get a 404, which is expected because we don't have that list. We don't have a route for this at all. So in order for us to do this, we have to create a route for the add link. Okay. So again, so this is the first step. Add some kind of button, some way of getting to that next place. That allows us to put in the yeah. Well, basically what it is yeah, you could. It used to be for something else, but Font Awesome's taken it over and used a class to kind of use it as to install a font. For us, we don't really care. We just keep moving. And so now we're here back in our routes contact. And before we had this route that was like router.get / and this is for our basic contact list. This can be quite confusing. And I've been talking to some students and they said, well, like, I don't understand how you got contact here and then you got contact list here. And there's a bunch of other times we see contact and contacts. So to reduce confusion, let's rename this contact up here. We'll rename this to contact model. All right. Contact model. Just renaming symbol. So really what we're saying, hey, contact model, find, you know, the thing that we're looking for, everything. Find everything is what this thing is. You can also specify a specific thing you want to find. Here we just want to do kind of a find, just like we did on MongoDB, and then store what you found in the contact list array. That's what this thing is right here. And then pass this contact list array to the page. That's what we're doing. So we're saying take this stuff and pass it into the page so we can use it. All right, so that's the original thing we did before. We need another route now. So we're going to use router.get. And the kind of router we're going to use a get. We're going to create the get route, right, for the add page. And this, what this will do, this will display, you know, the add page. Right? That's what it does. It just displays or renders it. Okay, that's what we want it to do. Now, something to note is we have combined routing and routing logic in one file, which we're going to separate out eventually. And what I mean by that is, here's routing. It goes from, like, the routing itself is just really this, right? And the routing logic is all this, the callback function, right? That's embedded in here. This routing logic can be removed from here and put into a controller, which we're going to do. Not today. Or maybe we will if we have time. So router.get, we want to get a new route. We need the path name. And we're going to say that we want to get the /add route. Okay, that's what we're going to add in. We need a callback function. So again, we need to have request, response, and next as a callback function. And what we're going to do here is we're going to respond with some kind of new page. We don't have this page right now, but we're going to res.render the page that we want. which is going to be a page that's going to be inside of our views in our context folder. Now, this is going to present some new problems, okay, which we'll talk about in a second. So if I say res.render, I want to render a page that I'm going to draw out. It's going to be, notice the view that it's looking for. And again, I'm going to say that it's going to be under context. And then under context, we're going to look inside another page that we don't have yet called add. All right. That's the first part of the rendering. If you notice also when we do a res render, you know, it kind of looks like this. We also want to pass in some additional information like this part, this kind of stuff, which I still want to do here. So I'm going to do that here. So I'm going to kind of pass in that stuff right there. And so contacts add, and instead of contact list, it's going to be like, the title will be like add new contact, add new contact. We're not going to pass in a contact list because there's nothing to pass in, so we can get rid of this. So this, the minimum should look like something like this. Would you agree? So again, res router.get, it actually, the get part of routing is all around rendering pages. Whenever you see get in your mind, I know this is simplified, and please forgive me. I'm trying to make this as easy to consume as possible. So it's not because it's necessarily the only reason why it's a get. We're making a get request. That's what it is, right? There's two types of requests you can definitely make when you access a server: a get request and a post request. Those are the two types of common requests. There's also a put and delete, which we're not going to use right now. So that's the first part of the routing we need to do. So router.get. Now the problem with this is we truly do not have any kind of add page. So we need to add it. So let's add this page in. So under views, contact, and here's where we're going to run into problems. You're going to see this problem in a second. This new page called add.ejs, okay? Just like before, when we have in our index.ejs, we probably want to have a partial header. So I'm going to copy this and put it into the add page. And we also, want to have a partial footer, right? So footer and header for the add page. So it kind of looks something like this, right? Header in the top, footer in the bottom, content in the middle, right? So we're going to have something like, you know, some kind of content for the add page, right? That's what goes in here. So just to test this out, because we don't even know if this works, I want to go in here and put an H1 tag. So I'll type it longhand. H1 tag that'll say something like, hey, inject the title, because that's what we have, inside the page. So we want the title of the new page in here, okay? Again, we're just using simple EJS to do this. Are you with me? Nothing too crazy here. Okay, like our routing is pretty simple. And let's make sure that I save this page, because if I don't save this page, then it would be very bad. Our contact route would never work, right? So I saw that it wasn't saved. So yeah, so going back to this very simple routing. So I'm going to go back to our page. So here's our page. I'm going to back it up, right? Refresh the page, click add a contact, and now we see our problem. So yeah, this worked, but we have no bootstrap and we have no navigation bar, but we do have content. So what's happening here? How come that happened? And let's discuss this a little bit. This is a common issue. So again, if I look at the console, you can see that I failed to load, so 404s on Bootstrap, all.min.css, jQuery, you know, and all the JavaScript stuff, even my own custom app.css and app.js, all that failed to load. And this points to a problem in our header and footer.ejs, okay? But why? Why would you say that's true? Anyone have an idea? If you did COMP309, then you know you will have similar problems in COMP309. In COMP309, we use .NET to do all the navigation and stuff. They're messed. Yeah, the paths are messed. So the path is messed up because now we're in a different place inside of our hierarchy on our website, right? So we're kind of down a level, right? We're down a level. and I'm asking you to kind of access stuff that's up a level. So there's some quick fix things, but nothing that'll help us in the long run. The quick fix would be able to go into our header. So if I look at my partials, and if I go into my header file and I was to change this and put dot slash, that would go up one and it would work. My challenge is that it would only work once. And what I mean by that is if I went down another level, so if I took this another level down, let's say I did an ad, but I wanted to do 2 different kinds of ads. I want to add one kind of user and add another kind of user, and I want to have another path all the way down, or 10 more paths, 10 more layers, a bunch of links all the way down from the ad page, right? Every single time I'd have to either create new navigation bars, which doesn't make any sense, or something else, some other way of resolving it. Now, one way to do it is to create your own custom routing. And when I say this, I mean to understand where the root of your page is, and have the root of your page being carried down. And .NET does that. It gives you the tilde. If you remember about .NET, you've used the tilde sign. And the tilde sign means go to the root, right? We don't have that here in Node, right? We kind of have to think a little fast. Now, here's what I propose. We can start with something like this. If I put the slash in here, right? So I go slash bootstrap. What this says is, hey, go to the root of your application and then go to bootstrap, right? Go to the root of your application, then go to Fort Awesome, and so on. So this may work, but it may produce other problems later. For example, on Heroku. Hey, Heroku, go to the root of your server. What? I can't go to the root of my server because the root of my server serves 20 million customers, right? I can't do that. So that might promote something else that's going on later on. We might have a problem with this. Again, going back to my footer, for now, we can do the same thing on jQuery, on Bootstrap, and my scripts file. And if I go back to my page and refresh, you can see now that we're good. We should check our home page too, right? So for home page, we look okay. We're all good here, but just to mention, even though this works now, it doesn't mean that it's going to work forever because we have to figure out a more long-term solution. Okay, so this is cool. So we've got this. We've got the ad page. It looks like it's going to work. Now, we've got to add more things to the ad page. So if I go to add.ejs, I want to frame this in the same kind of way that we framed our other page, which is using Bootstrap again, right? We want to kind of leverage a better framework than the one we've had before, or our own, unless you guys are designers, and again, I think most of us are not, then what you want to try and do is kind of go in here and use Bootstrap, leverage Bootstrap as much as you can, so you can create some decent looking content. So again, one thing we want to do is we want to move this from EJS. I want to go back to HTML so I can use my Emmet. And it's going to be looking something like this, div with the class of container. Inside that, we're going to have a div with the class of row. And you can see that I'm getting the preview over here of what it's going to look like. And inside div with the class of row, we're going to put div with the class of column-medium. It's the old way of doing it. Offset -3, and then another column-medium -6. And this is using Bootstrap's old 12-column grid. And if I just kind of click on the little blue link, I get that structure that I want, right? And what I want to do is I want to put my h1 tag inside of there, right? That's the first thing I want to kind of do. Then my h1 tag should go inside there because it's going to be inside that area. And then I want to add a form because I'm going to put something that I have to fill out. I'm adding a new user kind of thing, right? So I'm going to put a form with a class of form group. Actually, it's actually just form. Form with the class of form. And then you can also specify a method in brackets, which equals to, as an example, post. So you can see that this is what the preview is going to look like. Method is equal to post, right? Square brackets is you can put any attribute inside of square brackets to specify what it is, right? As a short form. Again, I recommend you learn a little bit more about Emmet. I think it's a good tool to use. Inside the form what we want to do is we want to have a div with a class of form-group, right? And inside that, we want to have a label, right? The label is going to have a attribute that's 4. We're going to make the attribute 4 equal to the first name field, which is going to be called the first name text field. So first name text field, kind of really long. But I'm making it long on purpose. So that's it for the label. If you want to use objects that are on the same level, so a greater than sign means inside of, right? On the same level is a plus. And you can also separate those two things with brackets. So I can say bracket. Okay, I want to put this inside, but next to my label, I want to put an input, which with type of text, right, by default. And the input is also going to have a class of form-control. I want to have an ID of first name text field, right? That's what I want to have. That's my ID. And I want to use a placeholder as well. So this is where I can add more reference items. So I can do something like, placeholder that's equal to enter first name, right? I can do that kind of thing. And you can see how we can keep typing. And it's all one big line, right? But it's kind of cool because it just saves you time in the end, right? I also want other things, but I think I'd like to stop here. And I can kind of end the bracket, right, which is what I want to do. Now, if you notice, if I'm not getting any kind of response, like if I get something like this and it doesn't continue, like, for example, I know that I want this, right? I want to be able to see this blue link. If I don't see the blue link, then I can't use emit. So now, one thing that didn't do for me is split things across different lines. And it's interesting that it just didn't do everything that I wanted, which is kind of interesting. This is the first time that's done this for me. So we can always back it up. The great thing is about emit is we can back it up and we can kind of do something like, well, I want to stop it so that I want to kind of do this. I want to go div form group. Here's my form group. And I want to take from here on in. I want to grab this part. And I want to cut it. But I want to be able to produce this form group thing, right? And just at least do this part. So there's my form group. And then you can always put that next part in there and see if there's a problem. You can always troubleshoot what the thing will look like if it's not going to work for you, right? So that kind of worked not so good. And you can I see what the problem is. My problem is these brackets. Brackets are not being liked very much by me right now. So, I mean, you can troubleshoot that. I've done this many times before, so sometimes it'll work better than others. I think that worked this time. And so what we have is a label, an input. I'm going to put the placeholder on the next line. You're going to see a bunch of stuff here on the next line. And I'm going to put other things, like, for example, required. I think that's kind of a thing we want to put in here for our input. One more thing we need to put in is a name attribute. What do I need the name attribute? Does anyone remember? What? So we got our ID, right, which is this. Let's just put it this way. Let's break down so there's just multiple lines here. So this one big input is this whole thing, right? Text field, text type is the keyboard that will come up on mobile. It's a type of input I'm making, so it's kind of a field that I'm going to be able to enter. My class form control is the bootstrap class, so it colors that field to make it look nice. ID, first name text field, is an ID that I can identify that first name text field if I want to add additional CSS styling to it. I'm not going to right now. Placeholder, what it does is it injects almost like a sample of what I'm looking for inside that field, but it's not the value. That's a different thing altogether. And name, my friends, is so required because it gives us the variable name. So name is the variable name that's going to hold the data that you enter into the field. Without this, you got nothing. You need the name attribute. Okay, so that's the first one. Let's see how this looks. Let's just do one at a time for now, just to see what we get and if we have to adjust anything. Required means that you can't move on unless you fill out this field. It's kind of like an HTML5 tag. If I go back and refresh now, we get this. All right, some rounded corners. We got some really cool rounded corners. If I hover over, it says, please fill out this field. I can, if I click into it, I get a bit of a highlight. This is all the Bootstrap stuff that we're getting, right, built in. One thing we don't have is our label name. We forgot to put that in, so that's why I'm testing it. Under label, we should have something like first name, right? That's got to go there. I refresh now, you see that that's the label we're getting, the first name label. Sometimes it's avoided. Sometimes you don't need that if you have this. It tells you what to put in there, right? And then a lot of times in mobile, all you need is this. You don't need to put this at all, the first actual label. Here, we're going to put both. And again, I'm going to just take this whole div tag with all the stuff inside of it, copy it. We're going to paste it. And we're going to paste it again because we need 3 of them. We need name, first name. We need last name. We need age. Right, so here's my last name text field. Change the ID to last name. Enter the last name. And then here's the last name. And the same thing goes for age. This will be age. Enter age, right? That's what this should say. Age name. Enter age name. No. Enter age. And this should be the age text fields. And we can just take this and copy that into there, which I forgot to change that. I did. And this should be just age, lowercase a. All right, so cool. So there we got a bunch of stuff to make this work. And now if we go back here and refresh, you can see now that we have a bit of the first form. I know it's kind of hard to see because it's a white background. But we got a bit of the first form here. First name, last name, age. And we need a button. Again, one thing to do is we can go back up to Bootstrap for the button. We can look at forms. And it gives us an example of what a form would look like. And hey, look here. You got everything that we had before, right? Except for it has this button here. Right here, which is a submit type button. And we're going to copy this button here, and we're going to go just underneath the last div tag, but before the form ends, right here, we're going to populate this button, which is of type submit. Class is button, button primary, submit. And we want to add a bit of font awesome in here because we have an option to do that. And if we go back to our font awesome and we look for it's kind of a submit, we have something like that, or maybe an edit. You know, I think this might be good. Something like this, a little something that looks like this. I'm not sure if you like this or outlines. Doesn't really matter, but it'll look pretty good. It'll look almost like this, whatever, depending on which one I use. I'm going to use this one for now, the default one. And I can actually just slot that in there as an I tag and give me a little space between the font awesome tag and my submit label. And now when I go back to here and I refresh, you can see now I've got that nice submit button, right? This actually works. If I actually click on this thing, it'll say that, hey, fill out the stuff. So I'll say like Tom Smith and then 50 and then click submit and it'll give me a 404 page because it's trying to do a contact list add. We can't do that because we don't have any kind of post. Can't do that. There's nothing like that for us. Because that's what we're doing here. In our action, right, is nothing. So we can get rid of this. But my method is post, which is the type of method we want. But we're doing a GET request. So post is not found. There is no method.post that we can use right now. So are you with me? This is not too crazy. It's just like literally just a form with a few fields in it. That's all it is, and a button. Okay? Are you good? Are you getting what I'm getting? If you're not, then we should review that because, again, on the test, you'll be asked to do some similar things that we've been doing in class this whole time, right? So you need to be able to put together some content and, you know, the usability that we've been talking about, just like we're doing here, okay? All right, so next part. So we've got that part done. We need to continue with this routing. So last time we did this get request. Now we need to do a post request. So we're going to, again, I'm going to do the post route for processing the add page, right? So that's the next part. So a get request displays the page. A post request, we can use the exact same route. So it'll start looking like this, router.post instead of get /add, same route, exactly. However, this time we're going to produce a and similar callback request response next. All this structure will appear similar. This. So post router.post add and then request response next. And then what we're going to have in here is some kind of processing that we want to do. Okay. So here's where we're adding or creating our first, kind of part of CRUD, and we're using create, right? So if you think about it, what we want to do is do the same thing we did last time. I want to use the contact model to create what we want. Okay. But before we set that up, what we want to do is we want to get the body of the stuff we just added from our form, and we want to create an object that we can add to the database. So that's what I want to do first. I want to say that let kind of a new contact, right, equal to a contact model. And I want to pass in some kind of data that takes up our contact model. The first field is first name, right? And we don't do it like this. In this case, we use first name, which is of the request.body, right? And in the request body, we're going to have a first name field, which we named. Now, why is it first name? Because we named first name in here. In our add.ejs, we said that the name attribute of this first thing is first name. If we called this something else, then it would be what our request.body would carry would be the first name. Now, we don't know if this even works at this point, right? Request.body, I'd like to do this. So the thing I'd like always to do before we get here, before we assume that we're going to get stuff from the database, is actually let's print out request.body on our console. So I'm going to go console log. Remember, this is going to go to the server console. We want to say request.body. What do we get? Do we even have anything that we got from the form? That's what I want to see, right? Just kind of a logical extension of what we're doing. So here's my form. If I press submit, then we should, if I go back to here and I press Control backtick, I should get some kind of object, and I do. I get first name Tom, last name Smith, age 50. See that? That is it's kind of hard to see for people who are back here. I wonder if I can, there you go. So yes, take a look at that. So first name, last name, and age. And that's coming right from our request body. What's the request body? It's the stuff we got from our form data. Press submit. Form data takes all the variables that we have inside of our form that we declared in the as name attributes in a form, and then it takes those three things, packages them up in an object, and sends them to the post request page, right, to process my request. That's how it works. So I've just sent this over, and we haven't been able to do anything with it yet, and we're going to take care of it right now. So we know this request body works, and we're getting data, which means this is a good thing. By the way, in the first section, we didn't. We made mistakes, right? So now I'm going a little faster. So first name is going to be the request body first name. We can actually get the first name variable from the body, right, or the object. The next one, of course, is going to be last name. Here's last name. And we want to do a request.body.last name. And then the last one, of course, will be age, which is request.body page. So we've created effectively here a new object, right, of type contact model. Does that make sense? Where the contact model is just another contact. Okay, so this object is something that we have that we can use to add. So we can use a create. We can do a create request, right, with a database, or call it a create action. I think that might be the better way to look at it, especially if you're a .NET person. They call them actions, right? I'm trying to make a relationship with that, with all that, so we can use the same kind of terminology. So we're in the same. We kind of have an analog for both things. So again, if we make this object, and once we finish making it, what we want to do is we want to pass it to the create action. So the create action looks like this. We say that, okay, contact model, I want to create. Notice that comes up. There's also other things you can do. You can see the find and whatever. This is like saying, I want to take inside of my collection, I want to find. I want to find by ID. I want to count. I want to do whatever you want to do, right? So here I want to just create. I want to create, and I want to pass in. Notice that there's 8 overloads for this kind of function. So I want to pass in, it says model docs. I can pass in that. I also can ask for anything else that I want. Docs with callback. And docs means documents, right? I want to pass in the document. What's my document? It's this thing here. This is the document, right? I'm making a document, which is my record. So I want to pass in my document, and then I want to have a callback that has an error and some kind of response if I want some. That's what it is. This is the first type, right? So again, I want to pass in my new contact, and I want to have a two possibilities: an error and some kind of so I pass those 2 things in, and I want to pass an error, and that's pretty much all I really need. I don't need anything else really. And I want to pass in usually my reference to my contact model. Again, I'm not going to use it, but this is typically how we do it. So once I've done this, I'm going to check to see if there's an error. If there's an error, then I want to log it out to the console log error. And I also want to stop I want to send res.end. I want to end my whole, I want to respond with this error. I want to say, you asked me for something, here's an error. That's what's coming back at you. So that's going to appear on the browser. However, if there's no error, what I want to do is bounce back to the, I want to kind of refresh the contact list, right? So I want to res.redirect. I want to redirect my response back to /contact list. I want to show me the contact list. So everything's good, going back to the contact list. If things are bad, break me. That's what this means. Give me a server error. Okay. And that's it. That's the add. I'm going to go back. I added something and go back to the contact page. I'm redirecting back to the contact page. Now I can add another one if I want. Go back to the contact page. Oh, yeah, I could. But you're going to get, this error is not the kind of error you're thinking. This is the error that gives you like a 500 error, like a server error. This is like something went wrong. I can't add. I can't create it somehow, right? For whatever reason. All right, so this is kind of cool. We're good. And let's take a look at how that looks. I'll snap. So here's my contact. I click the submit, and hey, there he is on the bottom, right? It all worked nicely. Let's add another one. Let's add some other ones here. We'll say Peter. If I want to click on submit now, it's not going to work. It's going to ask us to do this. This is the HTML side. Parker, maybe he's 20 years old now. And click submit. Here he is. Let's add one more. Let's add a Tony Stark. Why not? I like those kind of guys, right? Add him in there. Okay, so there's Tony Stark and Peter Parker and a bunch of other, all the Doe family here. right? So we're pretty good, but we've got some users here, and that's the first part of our process. So questions around create. Pretty straightforward, right? So first, couple things we need to set up, right? We always need to set up a link to do the thing we want it to do. We need to set up a route to respond to the link. We need to set up a page to respond to the route, right? So it's like there's a kind of a pipeline almost of workflow, right? Link, route, page, right? And that's how it goes. The next part is we want to put this up on GitHub. This is a good time to put it up on GitHub. We've had made some small changes here. So we're going to say something like, I want to accept all these changes, and I want to put this up on GitHub. I'm going to say added create functionality, to the database, right? And we kind of did that, and we're going to push this to GitHub. So now you guys can look at that code just in case I went too fast. All right, the next part. I want to update. And like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of a waste what I've done, right? I've got this view that's just add. But if you think about what the add view is, it is exactly like the update. I'm still going to have a field. I'm still going to have this field and this field and even the submit button, right? If you think about it, the only difference is that my fields are going to be populated with data. And when I submit, I actually edit what I've got, right? So that's kind of a few things that I can do here. So kind of I want to be able to do that. I also want to be able to stop myself whether I want to add or whether I want to edit or delete. I want to be able to stop myself from doing that here in this form. And I want to do that by adding a cancel button. So I want to do something like submit or cancel. What if I don't want to add that guy? I want to change my mind. I should be able to cancel and go back somewhere else. So I think that's something that I like to do now. So I'm going to go into I want to go into my page, and I want to add another button that does something else. Okay, that's what it's going to do. So underneath here, before I enter the edit form, I want to kind of do an anchor tag. Again, with an href of /contact list. So it's going to take me back to the contact list. That's what this is going to do. It's going to basically, ignore anything that I've done up here. I don't want it to be a link. I want it to look like a button. So I can say that I want to make it a class of button, and then kind of button warning. It's not really a button that's like danger. It's not danger. It's just a warning button that says you really want to go back. It's going to ruin what you just put in here, kind of thing. And then I'm going to use Font Awesome again to kind of go back, right? So maybe something like an undo. And if you look back at Font Awesome, just to get a nice icon, we can look at undo. So kind of something that looks like this, or backspace. And I like one of these. I like kind of the way these undo things look. I'm just going to copy this thing and put that in there. Again, this is a matter of personal choice. You might just not like this. But I want to kind of say cancel. So it's a cancel button. All right. So I didn't quite get around to doing this with the first class. I got interrupted, but it's here for you guys. If I go back and I go to my page now and I refresh, click on add contact, I'm going to get this cancel button. It kind of looks good, right? It's like, I cancel, click the cancel button, and it takes me back to here. It doesn't really do anything. So add cancel, right? It's got a kind of a workflow. And it looks a little bit more sophisticated than just having a single button that says submit on it, right? I could also have a reset if I really want to. right? Which I start typing. If it was a longer form, I may want to reset. And if I click reset, it just resets the form data. I can do that too. I'm not going to do that here, but there's lots and lots of stuff you can do with forms with Bootstrap. So again, this is kind of pretty good functionality. And I've added it in before. I'm going to do the editing because I need, I need to be able to do this. So a couple things. How do I edit these things? That's number one. Question number one. Well, I need either to click on this. So one workflow might be to click here. And then when you click here, you can edit them. That might be the way to do that, right? On a mobile device, you can do that. Maybe you can even swipe, right? And that swipe functionality would translate into maybe opening up a little area that shows me an edit button or whatever. We're going to keep it simple here. That's going to be a lot more JavaScript for us to make that work. Not that difficult, but just more. And what I really want to focus on is like back-end functionality today, not fancy little effects we can make. Those are all little fixes we can add later. Other things to note in terms of fixes is like the list is not alphabetical. You could add kind of a way of filtering it by name or first name by last name by age. Now, question: would you do that on the front end or on the back end? What do you think? Probably easier if you want to do it permanently. You can do it on the back end. If you want to just do it just for this view, you do it on the front end. So if you do it on the front end, it's JavaScript again. So you take that object that you're getting. You're taking it in as an array, and then you're playing with it by clicking little buttons on the front end and reloading what you're seeing here. And you can use Ajax, or if you really want to, you can do it on the back end. You filter it, and now you redo it, and you save it, and now that item is kind of automatically sorted. But on the back end, you don't want. Sorting a database it's not required. I don't think there's a requirement for that. You'd want to sort on the front end. But again, this is extra, making it pretty kind of functionality. Other things to do is paging, right? So right now I'm showing all of the data, but what if I don't want to show all the data? I want to show only 5 out of the 15 or 20 or 100 or 1,000, right? I don't want to show every piece of data. So again, filtering. I want to only show 4 or 5 or 10. And it's just taking that data and showing the first 5, the second 5, the 10, the next 5, or whatever. From that data, it's string manipulation or it's array manipulation, and then kind of repopulating this list with that using EJS, actually. EJS can do all that work for us, right? Next, so we have all this, but we want to add some functionality. What I want to do is I want to add a couple columns, right, in this thing, and it's going to have a couple buttons here. So every row is going to have an edit button and a delete button. Not great, but it's better than doing all that extra JavaScript work that we don't have really enough time to do anyway. So let's talk about this. I need to do this in my index.ejs. So I'm looking at contacts under index.ejs. The index is actually the contact list. That's what I'm looking at. And what I want to do is I want to add a couple of additional table headers. So the first thing I want to do here is change the table headers and just remove the value in the table header. So just expand the table by 2 columns. And then on the bottom here, I want to take an example of one of these rows in the repeatable table row area, and I want to add the first one. So I want it centered. That's the first thing I want, but I want to put in some kind of button. So I'm going to break this over a couple lines here so you can see this, okay? I want to break this by having a button, an anchor tag, right? Again, I'm going to move from EJS into HTML5 just so that way we can have some functionality. I want to make an anchor tag, and the anchor tag is going to have a particular type of pattern. So I want to go to contact list. I want to do that. I want to go slash take the ID that I get from my contact list and pass it into the link. So this is the link, right? And what I want to do is the ID itself is the place that I want to go. So what I want to do is I want to take the ID and I want to talk about this. When I remember we did this in Node. When we looked at Node, colon something, it gives us the ability for us to add in variable names, right? That's what it allows us to do. So it's not that complex, right? But it's like I want to be able to add in the ID. That's what I want to do. Okay, so it's kind of looking like this. I want to say something like, contact list, right? So here's the way it could be, contact list. And then slash, and then I want to add one of these, this whole part right here. I want to take this part, and I want to go in here like this, right? And when I add it in there, it's not age that I want, but actually underscore ID. Because remember, first name, last name, and age, and underscore ID are part of every object that comes from the database. All right? So say, okay, I want a special link that takes me to the ID of this object, right? So that's the first thing. And then what I want to do is I want to have a class. So I want to color this link a little bit. So I want to have a class of button dash primary, right? Which makes the object look pretty cool. I want to also put in an I tag, and the I tag is going to have a class of, and my thoughts are something like a pencil. So again, if I go to the Font Awesome site here and I say pencil, you can see that there's different kinds. Pencil's a pretty standardized thing for edit. I want to edit something, right? You can also go pencil square or pencil square, like an edit, like this. These are pretty good too. No matter what you choose one. I don't mind doing this, edit. This is pretty standard, right? It does, right? But if you notice what we got here, if I go back to this so far, the add button is here, and I want to edit the button here. I want to edit it, right? And if I click edit, I can see submit. So this is the same thing. Submit kind of looks the same. That's what you're saying. And notice I have like a couple of fields here that are empty, but I want to do something like this. We can actually either make it change one thing or the other. It doesn't matter to me. Again, I'm not going to be too picky here. I just want something that looks neat. So I could use edit, or let's just use the pencil just to make it different, right? So use the pencil. And we'll just drop that in there. Actually, it's probably all this. I didn't have to even do all that stuff. And the button itself will say edit. Okay. So again, to show that off, I'm going to go back to here and refresh. You can see that all the buttons here have edits next to them, right? Because it's a repeatable table error entry, right? And it doesn't go anywhere. If I click onto this right now, it's going to give me the ID of the object I want to edit. Okay, so each one of them are going to be different. Yeah.
Is this the ID from the database?
Yeah. So we got the ID from the database here, because the database is going to give us an object, right? First name, last name, age, and the ID, right? Whatever that is, right? Okay, so this is pretty cool. And I want to add another one of these in another TD, another table data kind of row or column, if you will. So another column, I want another one of these. And instead of it being a edit, I want to make it so it deletes, right? So again, the href for this one would be contact list slash and then delete, right? Slash and then the name of the ID again. I want to delete this ID. So this is kind of interesting. I mean, it's neat and all, but why don't I have edit here? If I have delete here, I should have edit over here, right? So that's kind of something I can do. I can make my form fit the way I like, right? So there's edit, that's the actual path. There's delete, so edit or delete, right? And I can have an ID on the bottom. Instead of button primary, I'm going to have button danger, because it's going to be a red button. I can delete something from my database. And delete, instead of this, let's use some kind of trash can. Let's go back to this and say trash. So we can have a trash can that normally is a delete, so we can do that. We'll take a trash can. We'll grab this one. And just to make it different, we'll just erase all this. I used other symbols in the first class. All right, and let's see how that looks. So we're trialing it out to see how it works, and it doesn't look bad, right? I mean, it's pretty cool. You've got edit and delete. Edit and delete. It should say delete. Copy paste stuff, right? When you copy paste, you never know what you're going to get. Yeah. Edit and delete, right? Delete really doesn't do anything, and neither does edit, but they have the same pattern: edit and then the ID, or delete and the ID, right? So that's we've set up. Remember, we talked about this. Link first. There's the link. We have to get the link by modifying the index page. Now we need to do the routing. Let's do the routing for the edit, and then we're going to have to create the page for the editing, and then we're going to have to process the editing, right? So these are all the things. So update is actually a much more complex thing we want to try and do. All right, so we'll take a short break after the update, okay? Because you guys have gone, you guys done your thing, and plus everything else. We'll take a short break. You guys can get some water or whatever. So I did the add, and my update, my edit is going to be identical to add. And again, I know I've done it in the past where I didn't even have an add. I had a details. And details would do both add and edit. And instead of having two different things, I could only have one. I'm going to go to one, but not today. All right? I want to show you how to do one. Maybe we'll do one when we do CRUD for user authentication and all that kind of stuff, right? Because we're going to have to do this whole other thing, CRUD for user management. Right now, we're just doing data management for a contact list, as an example, right? We're going to do CRUD for user management, where you actually add users and delete users. That's going to be a whole other type of CRUD, but similar forms. All right, so yeah, we've got this. That's great. But I want to make an edit. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy the add, and I'm going to paste it. And it gives me add one. We're just going to remove that or rename that to edit. And it's exactly like add, right? Except it's going to have slightly different things. So one thing that we have with this is our edit page, is I'm going to pass in the contact information. I'm going to pass that in here, right? Because I want to pass it in that's coming from the database. So this is our edit page now, right? It looks like the add, and also the button down here. Instead of edit, the button can stay the same, undo can stay the same, or we don't do anything. These are all good things. But one thing that we're missing is the value. So we can actually pipe in a value, and the value would be some EJS. So we're going to say some EJS. We're going to take the contact that we're going to send in here. So single contact, right? And we're going to pipe in, as an example, the first name of the contact that we're going to send in. Okay, we don't have a contact yet, but we're going to send a contact in, and we're going to assign it to the value. So we're going to read the first name from the contact. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to put that over here and do it again. And this will be the last name. I'm actually populating the list. So you see there's just very small change between add and edit. And that's why normally I don't do it. However, in recent years, I've gotten some feedback that says, I don't understand how edit can do both, or how my details list can do both. So I'm going to break this out like this first, longhand, and then later we'll tighten. One of the things that I've learned over the years is don't tighten things up as you go, right? So what I mean that don't optimize. I heard this terrible thing. Optimization is like is a bad thing. It's when you optimize, you waste a lot of time. Like I said, let's leave it as is. We don't optimize now. We make it so that it works. And then afterwards, we go back and fix and hone and test and all that kind of stuff. Because working is better than not working, right? You can make it look pretty all you like, but if it doesn't work, who cares, right? So that's the first thing. So we made this edit thing. Now we've got a location for it to go to, but we need a route. We don't have that yet. So I'm going to go back to routing, so contact.js. And we have a post and a GET request for the add. We need to do a GET request right now for the edit. So we're going to say this is the GET request. So kind of display the edit page. So this does. And again, just like we did before, now this is going to be different because this GET request is actually going to go to the database, find the user, put them inside of an object, take that object, disseminate it onto the page, right? Decouple all the components of the properties of the object. And then when we press the submit button, it's going to take us to the post request, right? So it's a little bit more challenging, but not much. So we're going to go do something like this. We're going to say that we're going to do a router.get. And this time, and this is where it's slightly different than what we've seen before when we do our routing stuff, in that the routing information is going to, or the syntax is going to look slightly different than what we've seen before. Okay, so this is how it looks. We're going to say that router.get slash, and then it's going to be edit. Remember, that's our route, slash, and then colon ID, right? Remember I just talked about this? My colon ID says the ID is a variable that we're going to get from our params parameter from the request body, right? So ID is a variable. We're going to get that number. Guess what the ID is? It's that long hash, right? So we can create what looks to the user as custom pages, but they're not. They're just gobbledygook. They're just like a path, and the path is going to be a new dynamic route. That's what it is. That is equivalent to the ID of the user, whatever that is. So it's going to appear different every single time, right? But it's not really. It's just it's an illusion. And so what we're going to say is that we want to have a callback with request, response, and next. And what we're going to do is this callback is going to have very similar things we've seen. However, what I want to do here right away is set up a ID variable. So I'm going to say ID is equal to request.params.id. Okay, that's what it is. Now, this part, request.params. I can put whatever I want there. Whatever I call this. Okay, I'll show you what I'm talking about in a second. Let's make it ID for now. All right. So I can, if I do a console log, again, I want to go slow, so I want to understand what it looks like, right? So whatever I put in the ID, I want to spit out to the console. All right, let's see if that works. So I go back to here, right? If I refresh the page, and I click edit, I got nothing. Why? Because I'm not actually displaying anything. So if I go back to here, and I should see the ID. There it is, right? So this is the ID of the user that I'm spitting out to the console. So I'm actually getting that. Okay, cool. Well, what if instead of calling it ID, I called it Tom, right? Can I do this? What do you think? Is that allowed? Yes. Yes, my friends. It's totally allowed. I can call this whatever I want, right? So Tom instead of ID, right? It's just a variable name. So if I did this, saving it, and if I go back, and it says Tom is not defined, let's go back here for a second, refresh, edit, Tom is not defined. What the heck is Tom? Oh, but here's ID, right? Sorry. Terrible people, right? Terrible. Okay. So it works, right? We can put whatever we want in there. We don't have to put ID. ID is our thing. That's our variable, right? And so that really makes our path names customizable. We can make something that, on a routing perspective, that allows us to put whatever we want, right? Which is way more powerful than being, it being driven by a particular framework or pattern, right? This is us. We can do whatever we want to do. So put this back to ID just to make, because it makes sense to be ID. That's why we're putting it back there. Tom doesn't make any sense. Tom doesn't make any sense. All right. Yeah. If you want to print the name, but remember it's request.params. Whatever you want, right? So yeah, I want the ID. That's what I want, right? So so now let's go back to the next part. So now that I've got the ID, what I want to do is I want to use the contact model again, and I want to find by ID, right? I got the ID. I want to find by ID, right? And when I find by ID, I'm going to pass in the ID, and I'm going to pass in a callback where I take the error and I pass in what looks like the, my contact, right? And contact is actually the thing that I'm going to, and let me just call this, instead of contact, we'll call this, just so we're not confused, we'll call this the contact object from the database, right? We can also, if you really want to be clear, we can call this DB contact, database contact, whatever you want, but that's what this thing is, right? Let's call this the contact object, contact object, there we go. And the contact object, because I know naming is also quite challenging. I mean, for people to understand, I mean, people use contact, and they're like, what does each of these things mean, right? They're the same thing, right? But it's not exactly the same. All right, so we're going to say, again, if we have an error, what do we want to do? We want to console log it, right? And we also want to respond with a error to the user. We're going to say some kind of error. We get like a 500 error, some kind of weird thing happened. We want to capture that error. We don't want our server to crash. We don't put this error kind of handling stuff. Our server has a chance of crashing. That's reality, right? And I don't want my server to ever crash, right? And now what I want to do is I want to show the edit page, right? With my, or the edit view is really what we want to show, right? And I want to do res.render. It's going to be slash, again, contacts slash edit. And I want to pass in an object here with the details that I want. I know that I want a title, and the title is going to be something like edit contact, right? Because that's what it's going to be. And then I want to pass in my contact information, and that's going to be the contact object from the database, right? So if that makes any sense, right? And that's really it. That's what I need, right? So once I've got this, it's going to pass it in, and we're going to be good. That's all we need. Yeah, because that's coming from the database, right? So remember, contact, it comes in. We've already provisioned for this in our edit.ejs, where we have our contact.age. It reads the age from the contact object we get from the database and populates it right inside of our field immediately, right? So we're reading from the database and we're throwing it into the form that we got, right? Okay, that's great. And now we're going to go back out. Yeah. Contact itself, like you're talking about inside of this is contact object I'm putting in, and I'm saying the contact for the page is, I'm just keeping them all set different names so you understand what they are. So there's two components, or two variables, if you will, or I don't know, objects that I'm sending into the page through EJS. One of them is the title object, and the other one is the contact object, which I'm passing the contact object into. It's pretty clear, but hopefully this helps. The naming, I'm trying to make the naming help everyone from David to me. How about that? Because it's it can be confusing, right? You look at it and you're like, what the hell is that, right? All right, so if I click edit now, we can see that failed to look up contacts edit in views directory. All right, so that's interesting. Edit. Did we not put this in the views directory? Maybe we didn't. EDA, no, it's there. Contacts edit. Contacts edit. Contacts edit. Wait. What? I just don't understand. Why does it do this to me? Why? Because of this little slash here, that's why. Right? Because this shouldn't be contact slash. Contact slash means go to the root, and that's not what we want. So yeah, let's go back and click edit. Now we can see that John Doe 30 is populated there. If I click cancel, it goes back to here. That functionality stays, right? And if I click any of the other ones, Jane Doe, age 25, cancel. Where it won't work is if I go submit. Submit doesn't do anything right now, right? Because we're trying to submit something that doesn't exist. Okay? So submit, there's no functionality. We haven't finished. We're not finished with our update. We're just literally all we did was made a link. We read it, populated the page that we created, and now we have to actually do the updating, right? These are all the stages, the steps we have to do for update. Update is the most complex part. Yes.
How do this router work? Because first time we created an index router, then we created a
Context router.
contact router.
Yeah.
So we require a router in this other file. We import it from app.js.
Yes.
So how does it know? Is it router or contact?
Okay, that's a good question. So how does it know if it's an index router or a contact router? So if you look at app.js, this is good. Stop and review. Remember that we create our contact router object, which is a pointer to the contact.js page that's inside the routes folder. That's all. That's the first part. And the second part is the actual route, which is down here. So when we have /contact list, go there. That's what it does. So the server is waiting for either a slash, which is the root, followed by about or contact or whatever, as well as contact lists, and followed by add or edit or whatever, right? That's how it works.
Contact router is like contact route.
Contact routes page. That's what it does, right? So, and I can make as many of these as I want. I can have, routes, specific routes for some other page, my users page, which we're going to have. I'm going to have a users route, my user management. This is contact management, all right? Yes, you can also use static routing if you need to, right? So if I want to use static routing, I can just read the way regular HTML pages look with no EJS. If I want to avoid using a view altogether, I can just display flat pages as well. I have the capability of doing that with Express, right? However, it's not recommended. If you're going to use Express, you might as well use the power of Express, which is injecting, data, right? Otherwise, don't even use Express. Use something else. Use Angular with the back end of Firebase, and you're good to go. Or React with Firebase in the back end, and you're good to go. You don't need Express at all, right? Angular and React?
No, Firebase.
Firebase is like an online kind of back-end database, and Angular can do everything for you. Angular would be served on a regular website that doesn't require Node. You wouldn't even have Node. Just a regular any other stack could serve Angular. Yeah. Yes. However, you could also do static pages if you need to. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so this is this part here. So let's finish this thing off, and then we'll take a break, like I said. So I want to go here, and I've got the GET request for the edit page. Now I want to process the edit page. I press submit, but I can't do anything yet, right? I want to be able to take my new information and populate it on the database, and then update my contact list immediately. Let's see how that works. So again, this time we're going to do a post request, which we're going to use to update the database with data from the edit page. That's what we're going to do. Okay. So we're going to do a router.post with the same path, exact same path. So again, it's going to be /edit/ID, right? We're going to pass this in. And this time it's going to be the same thing, request, response, and next. Same pattern that we've seen before with our callback. And again, we're going to, in here, invoke, we want to get the ID. We want to say that let ID equal to request.params.id. We want to get that ID. And now we can use that ID to find the thing that we want to mash up, okay, to update. However, and this is something that I want you to think about, we're not going to update just one part of my contact, but every part of my contact, every property. Why will we do that? Because it's easier. Because we don't have to worry about which field has been updated. We just update all of them, right? So the way it would work is we want to create a new object called, updated contact, right? I'm making this up so that way it's easy instead of contact again. Updated contact, which is equal to some kind of the contact model that we're going to create. We're going to pass in information. For example, we want to say that our ID is actually equal to the ID. We're not going to update it, but we're going to update it, right? And then we're also going to say that the name, our first name, is going to equal to the rec.body.firstname, right? And we're going to say that our last name, so we're going to come and going the other way now. We're going to say that rec.body.lastname. And finally, our age is equal to rec.body.age. Right, so this is our object. We haven't updated yet. We just created an object. We need to send a document. If you think about this, this is our document that we're setting up, right? So document equals this new, call it contact document. You can also call it that, is equal to this, this schema we're using, right? And then we're going to say contact model. And if you think about that, what we want to do, right, is we want to update, right? We want to update. It's pretty simple. But now the update is a little weird. The update looks like this. We pass in an object to update. So we have to search, almost like find something we want to find to update. We're going to look for the ID, and we're going to use the ID that we've got to identify the object that we want to update. And then after we've done that, we want to pass in the updated contact information, right? We also want to have a callback just for the error, for error handling, okay? So now in this case, for update, we have 3 different parameters. The thing we're looking to update, find that thing, all right? Second part is, what are we updating with? What's the object, this thing here, that we're passing in here to update with? By the way, you could take this whole thing and put it in line. It's ugly, but it's done, right? You understand what I'm saying? Take this whole thing and just take this contact model stuff, like just put this whole thing in here, put it in there, right? All in one line, right? This is ugly, but it can be done. All right, and then after we've done that, we want to check to see if we have an error. If we have an error, like we said, we're doing error handling again. Like we know, we're going to console it out, console log, error, and then res.end with an error, right? And what we want to do is then say else, if everything goes well, let's just refresh the contact list, right? Everything's been well. We've already updated the database, update the contact list. And the way to do that is res.redirect. We'll redirect ourselves back to the contact list. That's what that does. That just updates the contact list, okay? And that's our update. So let's try it. So are we good with all this? So first, again, we do a GET request. We populate the page with all the stuff from the database. We press submit button. Submit button takes us back to here. And now we're going to handle the request, right? We create a new object, with the right format. And then we call the update function. We find the object we want to update in the database. That's the first parameter. The second parameter updates the object with our data. And the third parameter handles errors, if any. And if there's no errors, then we redirect back to our contact list, which we refresh. That's how it works. Okay, let's check this out and see if it works. Going back to here, refresh, click edit, and I want to change John Doe's name to Mark Doe, and then click submit, and then there it is, Mark Doe, right? I want to change Tony Stark, or I don't know, let's Tom Smith to Tom Smythe, right? We can do that. And that's good. We've modified stuff. Editing is going well. Questions around this? That's the update part. I know it's long, but can you imagine trying to do this all last week? By the way, this is why we're not going to get to doing any authentication this week too much. I'm going to kind of introduce authentication, and we're going to be slightly behind the other group. But don't worry, right? I'd rather you guys have a solid foundation in how to do this kind of stuff than rushing and not knowing what to do. And then, having Angular not work properly for us because we don't understand routing at all. Yes, you were going to ask a question. We do not have to do a functional contact form. The contact form in assignment number 1 is only, it's a placeholder for real contact. We're going to do that later on, right? Yes. Okay, so you mean in here? Yeah. This whole contact thing, the whole thing. I mean, yeah, we can pass whatever you want. I could pass Mark Doe and the whole thing if I really want to. The challenge is that when I do this, I can use EJS to do whatever I want, right? I mean, I can pass in Mark, Doe, and 30 in the link that I'm clicking on here, right? And remember, and when I get it, I can respond to it. I can have Mark, Doe, and 30, and I can have those things in there. I don't have to even bother going to the database anymore, if you think about it, right? Because I have the database information here, so I can do whatever I want, right? So the reason why that's better is because I don't have to do another round trip. Because our database will do a round trip, go out to the database, grab stuff, and come back. So your way would be better for that perspective, for sure. Because otherwise, what I'm doing here is accessing the database multiple times. Your way only accesses the database right here from the contact list. The danger to your way, just letting you know, is if something changes on the database in between swipes. So let's say you and I both access the database at the same time. You delete Mark Doe, and then I go back and update them. Automatically what? Not right now. We're not in refresh. We're not in a. This is not two-way data binding. So what you see right now is static. If the database updates right now, I don't see it here, unless I refresh the page. Right? With Angular, I will have two-way data binding. As soon as something changes on Angular, this will be updated right away. That's the powerful thing about Angular. You'll have real-time two-way data binding with Angular, which is where we want to go to. Right? Okay, so let's pause it here. Let's pause the video, take a short break, and then when we come back, we're going to continue with delete, and we're going to start into do a little bit of optimization, minor optimization things, and then go into authentication pieces. Okay? You have a question as well? Oh, okay, I'll be right back. All right, guys, I'll see you in a sec.